Welcome to the Common Good Show, episode 1, brought to you guys by Guadalupe Roastery. Today, my guest is a very special gentleman. He and his wife, Jen, have between them 11 children, 4 biological and 7 by the grace of God. This gentleman has served our country for a number of years, and if you've flown American Airlines in the past 3 decades, there's a fair chance that he has had your life in his hands. I just want to welcome Mike McQuade onto our show. How are you doing this morning?
Real well, Dan. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And what better thing to talk about than good stuff?
Yes, sir.
Looking forward to it.
I agree. Thank you so much. Yeah. So you have 11 kids, which by any standard is a lot.
We're off to a good start.
I love just the start. I love that. Again, four biological, 4 yours, and 7 that you've wonderfully adopted, and obviously working on more. There's little things that I think in everyday life for a normal family become very exaggerated, very hands-on when you have that many kids, even if they're not necessarily all at home. And I think that is a beautiful way that we can see like a lot of virtue in our daily lives. Is there anything in particular, as far as like your morning routines go and whatnot, when you are home with your wife, that you really love? Something just about having that relationship with your kids and the family that really makes you smile and think like this is so good.
Well, for starters, when I get up in the morning, sometimes I'm the first one up. I try to be very quiet. And,
that's fair.
And have the entire place to myself, because once things start, and they don't slow down for about 15 hours. But probably just watching the individual children come down and join the pack that's already there. You know, whether it's just me and it's my daughter, first one down, comes up, gives me a big hug, and I'm sitting there having some coffee or something, and she'll start on the dishwasher or whatever she does, her first thing, and then 2 more will stroll down, and then someone will come out of the back hallway, and then my wife will come out of the shower or whatever, and I really appreciate the way that they interact with each other, and there's joy in the morning. You know, there's good stuff about to happen, and we're just waiting to see what God has planned for the day.
And kind of as they trickle in one by one, I anticipate, because obviously I'm not there in my own life, but I anticipate it's got to be, you're a very lively person. And I've known you for a very short amount of time, but in the short time I have, your energy is just infectious, and it's lovely, and it's kind, and it's there for everybody. And I have to believe that your kids reflect some of that as well. When they come down in the morning, when they start doing their tasks and whatnot.
Yeah, I think they do. The boys probably more than the girls, and that might just be a function of their age, because they're younger and little people wake up quicker. You know, the girls are extremely vibrant. They just don't express it the same way, and you know, and so maybe that lends to our even calling them out on it in a good way, because we have pet names for both of the girls. Hope is Hopi Bear, and Grace is Gracie Cakes.
I love that.
So as Grace blesses us with her presence, you know, we all are looking up the steps as she's coming down, and we're all going, "Cakers, good morning, Gracie."
That's so sweet.
You know, and the same thing with Hopi Bear. So the boys are usually more loud, I guess. You know, more vibrant, more loud, more like me, I would say noisy.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
in a good way.
I love that. My younger sister, I have a younger sister and an older, but my younger sister, we actually, in a similar way, growing up, we called her Abby. Her name's Abigail, but we called her Abby Joe Pumpkin. And so it'd be Pumpkin or Abby Joe Pumpkin or something like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's super sweet. I think the family is such an important part of not only, you know, communities and towns and whatnot, but I think the family mindset is such an important part of our entire lives. In every aspect, it has an effect. And so is there any particular area in your life outside of the home where you have found that relationship with your kids and with your wife and having the 11 beautiful children and pursuing more children as well, an area of your life separated from them where some of the virtues or some of the things that your family brings into your own personal life really help you through the other work that you're doing?
I can put up with just about anybody. No one at work is ever going to overwhelm me.
Fair enough.
I'm a wide body airplane pilot, and so I sit next to the guy for 3 days, usually 8 hours at a time. Sometimes there's 3 of us, and we alternate through, and so I get a chance to one-on-one with this guy, and then one-on-one with that guy.
Yeah.
And we'll hear stories about the next guy we're flying with, and then he shows up. I'm like, that guy wasn't so bad at all.
I don't like that guy.
And but I will say, we're supposed to be about evangelization, right? We're supposed to tell people about Jesus. Preach the gospel everywhere you go, and when you have to, use words, right?
Yes. Yes, that's good.
So I preach the gospel by talking about my life. You say, hey, did you get some rest today? We fly overnight.
Yeah.
Pretty much, if it's dark, we're flying. If it's daylight, we're at the hotel or home. And so we'll ask each other about the schedules and see who needs to take a break first or whatever. And he'll say, so did you get some rest today? I'll go, oh, no. You have no idea what my family looks like, And the beautiful thing is just expressing what my life looks like in a joyous way opens up a conversation that we can have for another 5 hours. And it always boils down to, so why'd you adopt all those kids?
Yeah.
And occasionally I'll fly with another guy, almost to a man, they're fellow Catholics, that has a whole herd of kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a guy up in North Florida and another guy in the Charlotte area. They have 9 and 6 children.
Wow.
And I remember one flight years ago, a flight attendant came up. I was on a smaller airplane, so it was 2 pilots, the captain and I, and then a flight attendant. And a passenger got on and said, I'm really nervous. I'm afraid of flying. Are you guys going to be safe?
Yeah.
And it was me, Nick Schwain, and I don't remember who the flight attendant was, but I remember, I think she had 4 or 6 children. Anyway, the number collectively was 22. Wow. I said, between the 3 of us, we have 22 children, so we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure, we don't orphan all those
We're going
kids.
to do our very best to make sure that we and you get exactly where we need to be.
Yeah, so, but then the bridge of just opening that conversation, it's such an easy thing to bring up.
Yeah.
I don't have to scratch around and find a way to talk about church. I just talk about life.
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
a great life that I have, and I'm joy-filled, and I ask my kids all the time, do you know anybody that has a better life than me? And they haven't found anybody yet, and neither have I. And so anyway, that's a great bridge. And they say, hey, well, why are you adopting all these kids? You already had 4. That's a lot.
Right.
And I get to talk to them about we're not our own. We've got a lot of work to do. We love kids, and what better thing than to get them from a country that isn't going to teach them about God and bring them to a community that lives and dies for God.
Right.
So that's maybe an aspect that I take from my personal life of what we have, and express that apart from my family because of my family.
Well, and I love the fact that you focus those conversations around what you said, preaching the gospel and sharing the love of Christ and sharing Jesus, but not overtly regarding the church. I share my life just by, I share Jesus just by sharing my life.
Right.
And I think, and the premise of what we're trying to build here with the show, and prime example of you are a perfect, and I'm so happy that you're here for our first guest. But I think it's those little things in our everyday life in a world that's, at least especially now, is so focused on contemplating all of the biggest, the loudest, the boldest, craziest, brightest things that happen that aren't necessarily any good for us.
Right.
Whether that's physically or spiritually, especially when trying to build a family and that sort of stuff. I think when we highlight little things like family, it's such an image of Christ's love for us and how we're all brothers and sisters. And so you don't have to be like, these are the 10 commandments. This is what you like. You don't have to break it down like
Here's
that.
my Bible.
Yeah, exactly. You talk about that relationship with your 2 daughters that are at home, and when they wake up and how the kids come down, and just sharing that is enough. Sharing that is enough good news for people, especially in the world today, that it almost is more effective, I think, in a lot of circumstances than if you tried to open up a conversation where you're like, so do you go to church? Not that there's anything wrong with that conversation.
Right.
But if you start talking about your kids and your life at home, then people just start to engage. It's a much more natural, beautiful conversation, and it all gives glory back to God.
Right, and we can't talk about our life for more than 18 seconds without people knowing that we are immersed in our church community.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so how'd your day start? Well, I got up at 7 and brought my son so he could serve at Mass at 7:30. You know, where does that happen?
Yeah.
That's not Publix, that's not the park, we're not going to play softball. Oh, so you play a lot of softball?
That ain't softball.
We go to Mass, you know?
Yeah.
And it's interesting though. You were talking about virtue,
yeah.
and in our conversation yesterday, we talked a little bit about the smaller things, and how we preach the gospel.
Yeah.
And I did a couple loads of laundry this morning, and I just was walking through the laundry room to the garage, and there's a big pile of stuff. So one door opens, gets folded, the other door opens, goes into the first door, and hit start.
Yeah.
Praise God for machines, right?
Amen.
And it took about 3.5 minutes, and it's probably still in. I actually did one load, and but I flew with a guy, and we do a lot of laundry.
Yeah.
Right. And we have a pool, and when anybody comes over, they use our towels, and so they go in the laundry, which is a whole load of its own, you know.
Towels are big.
And I flew with the guy, and you don't know the impact that you're having, but I flew with him like a month and a half later, and one of the flight attendants came up and said, "Hey, do you know who this is?" Pointing at me.
Yeah.
That's Mike. You know how many kids he has? Yeah, he's got a lot, like 10 or something, right? She said, yeah. Do you know how much laundry they do? And he remembered just this, I don't even remember talking to him about it.
Yeah.
He said they do like 18 or 20 loads of laundry a week or something. I forget the number, but he remembered that. And so just in her quiet, submissive, joyful, lovely way, and believe me, my wife does 95% of that. You know, I do a load every Friday maybe. Let me throw that out. But just in the way that she is working towards sainthood, it's a beautiful thing that speaks to people without even realizing that speaks to people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just living life and being excited about it. It's not a drudgery. You know, we could have stopped at any time. You know, people say, do you know what causes that? How many kids do you have? Oh, 8, 10, 11. You know what causes that? I'm like, yeah, it's usually a 15-hour flight, a ginormous check you write, and then you got to go through a bunch of pain while you're there. You get a visa and the passport, and then you come back and make them citizens. That's how that happens.
They weren't expecting that answer.
No, they're like, buy a TV or something, you know.
I want to come back to the whole virtue of that process, because I know it's getting more difficult every single day. But I want to touch on something that you said a moment ago, where how you preach the gospel and share love without even knowing it. You know, it was that simple thing of like how many loads of laundry that registered with someone, and that really made them think about like, wow. And I think it's very easy, especially when we have a passion for what we're doing, or we have a passion for our faith or anything like that. We want to share, we want to talk about it, but a lot of times, and this was the case for myself, a couple years ago, I went through a really tumultuous season, but a very spiritually healthy season for me, and it was breaking down a lot of barriers and stuff, and there were different like fears and insecurities that I'd never addressed and never thought about. But one of the biggest things was I had this feeling or this notion that in order to really help people, in order to have this impact that I wanted to have on people, all I've ever wanted to do was have a family and help people. And but I was under the impression that until I was, in this position or until I was making this much money, I couldn't really help people.
Right, sure.
And I think that is extremely prevalent. And I say that because I've had a lot of conversations with people who, different scenarios, same situation. But in that mindset, in that capacity, it's almost like we think that it all relies on us. That like in order for anyone to be helped, anything to happen, it's got to be me, and I got to do this. Where the reality is, God is going to use the little everyday things.
Right.
And it's not us that are changing hearts and changing lives. We're the tool, and we're here, and Christ is going to, hopefully, is going to shine through us in the little things we do, even if it's just something like laundry. It's like that's a normal part of your life. And shout out to Jen for doing all the loads.
Praise God.
And you play your part, small but albeit very important part. There you go.
Yeah.
No detergent, no laundry.
Right.
But even like tiny little things like that, and who knows? And I like to think of the butterfly effect in this sense, where there's all these different scenarios I play out in my head, but so much as something I love singing in the car, I love just like having fun, and a lot of times I'll be jamming out and look over, and then someone will like real quick look away, like they're watching me and they're like, oh, I don't want them to know. And I like to think that, and maybe not at all, but I like to think that at some point, like maybe that had an impact on somebody too. Like God can use literally anything.
Right.
And maybe singing in the car was enough for somebody to go into maybe an interview more confidently, or they went into the store and they were a little bit happier, and so they thought about their kids or their wife and grabbed like an extra box of cookies. I don't know, whatever it was.
Sure.
But he can use anything, and it doesn't revolve around us, or we are not the ones who are going to control everything like that. And so it's in the little things, in the little virtues, in the common good, the little things every single day.
Absolutely.
That kind of shine through. But that to redirect back to the process of adoption, I want you to explain a little bit some of the challenges that you faced, at least recently, because I think there's a lot of virtue in it, and it's something that, especially here in the States, we take for granted because it's not a really big deal.
Challenges with the adoption process, or
with
having adopted children, or
all of it, everything surrounding it, just because I think it's one thing to be married and have a kid and raise your own kid. It's another to feel that call to go adopt a child and to bring them from whatever circumstance they're in into your life. But I'm sure there's emotional challenges, and there's financial, and then there's getting there and all sorts of stuff. But I think there's a lot of virtue in seeing that process through, and so I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, well, people ask me, is it hard to adopt? Mm-hmm. And I always say the same thing. I say, well, it's not hard, but it's a process. Mm-hmm. Like, could you walk to Boston from here?
Technically.
Right. You just got to do what? Keep walking.
Yeah.
Right. And when we started the whole process,
I don't know if I'd make it the whole way, but
well, you could though. And then you could walk around the Chesapeake Bay. Stay to the left, watch the mountains, and if it rains, you'll get wet, but you just keep walking.
Yeah.
So you'll definitely get there if you want to.
Right.
But you got to not quit.
Right.
And that's kind of the process. There's nothing cosmic. You don't need a rocket scientist or anything. We did it. But you just have to stay with it, and there is a good deal of expense involved.
Yeah.
Going through the process, we learned how to streamline. We've been through it several times now.
Yeah.
And a couple of the adoptions, we didn't go 7 times. We went 5 times because 2 of the adoptions, trips 3 and 4, we got 2 boys on each trip, and so each time we needed to duplicate all the paperwork that we had done previously. We figured out how to get it quicker or better or more cheaply, or we could batch them and send them to the notary and to the apostille place. And so we got more efficient at it, But it was extremely frustrating. You have to get, of course, a lot of background paperwork stating that you don't have any crimes against children for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that's fair.
And we lived in Utah in the Air Force days before any kids.
Yeah.
Well, we had two of the biological boys. So anywhere you live longer than 6 months, since you're 18 years old, you have to get a background check. So we had to get one from Utah, and we hadn't been there since we were in our early 20s.
Right.
And now we're much older than that. But for each adoption, we had to go back to the state of Utah and say, hey, can you show that we don't have any crimes against children from 1996? And then 2 years later, we'd get that exact same piece of paper signed by the exact, are you guys adopting again? You know, one of you guys told us.
Yep.
Because it's the same courthouse, you know.
Yeah.
And ridiculously, that piece of paper costs about $300 by the time if you're doing this from Germany, each time across the pond, it's $100 on DHL.
Yeah.
So you can FedEx it and have tracking. It's DHL from over there. So it's a somewhat expensive process if you've moved around a lot. If you're local, homegrown, and you just have to go to the courthouse to get everything. Right. It's much quicker and a little less expensive. But there's great stories that come out of that too. We were getting ready to go and get our third adopted child, Liam. He's turning 12 next month, and got him as a baby. And then right before we went to travel, my wife's on all these Yahoo groups, you know, for the adoption support groups. You know, you can email and it goes to like 68 bazillion moms on the planet, you know, and they all read everything. And so somebody emailed, there's this boy that needs to be adopted. When you're in China and you turn 14, you age out, so you can no longer legally be adopted. Okay. So it's about 5 weeks away from that, and these emails come out. And my wife said, hey, I think this might be us. We need to go and adopt this boy and add him to our trip. And I was thinking, I'm absolutely sure that's not us, you know. And so we had a conversation, you know, and I had some maybe obvious concerns with young daughters in the house, bringing a 14-year-old from on the other side of the world that we didn't know anything about.
Absolutely.
And it was another $17,000 that we needed to come up with in the next month. And there were some dark days in the airline industry where we were all making what we made back in the 80s. And so there were a lot of barriers. So of course my wife said, very, very wisely, why don't you pray about it? So
she knew what she was doing.
I said, absolutely not, no way. I know what's going to happen if I pray about it. Forget it, I'm not going to pray. And so of course I did. And we actually knew somebody from our first trip that helped us get some Christian Bibles and music into China through a back door. He knew the orphanage director where this young man was, and I think he only dealt with a couple of orphanages in all of China, and there's like quite a few. And so he got a letter from the director that the boy had told his teacher, and the teacher had translated. And then she gave us a super fantastic report about this young man that's now my nice fantastic son. And did I mention the $17,000?
Yeah.
So we had this fundraiser, and so anyway, after I decided to pray about it, right? I said, okay, Jen, we can do this, and we can jump through hoops and do the paperwork. We're good at that now, but the money's got to be up to God. There's no way. I looked under all the mattresses, and you know, honestly, I'm glad it wasn't $1,000 or $2,000, because I could have called you. Maybe you have an extra $1,500 in your checking account. I could have called my mom. I could have called a lot of people, and they would have bridged the gap of $2,000. But nobody had $17,000, and I don't have that many friends, you know. And so we had this fundraiser, and in one weekend, in the book of James, it talks about true religion is helping widows and orphans in their affliction. And you see what I do with my hands. One hand's for the widow, one hand's for the orphans. There's this nonprofit called Both Hands by J.T. Olson. And so they have the Both Hands Project, where we actually worked on a widow's house all day, one day. And so I said, hey, Dan, you're my friend, come and work on the house. And then I've got these 50 letters for you to mail out to your friends to sponsor you to work on the house. Kind of like when people play golf to cure breast cancer.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So friends of yours and the other 60 people that came to work on the house all sent funds through a 501c3.
That's awesome.
To aid in our adoption while we fixed a widow's house right down the street from where we lived. And it was a beautiful thing. And can you guess to the penny how much money we raised?
$17,000.
$17,000. We got
insane.
the last $3,000 check. So we're driving out to go to the airport.
Yeah.
We're $3,000 short.
Oh.
And I turned the mail off on Monday. And we're leaving Wednesday morning to drive to the airport. It's like 4:30 in the morning. My wife says, hey, check the mail. Oh, I turned it off. Well, let's check anyway. $3,000 check in the mail. They shouldn't have even been there.
And chills.
And there's like 1,000 stories.
That's
just
insane.
like that, where we go, okay, God.
I love hearing those little moments of faithfulness. And a friend of mine used this term, and so I think about it all the time. He called them God winks, where it's so perfectly clear.
Yeah.
Like God is always very active in our lives and always faithful, but there's some moments where it's like, it's so obvious.
Maybe for those of us that are more dense, we need it to be more obvious. And it couldn't have, there are so many times just looking back, it couldn't have been more obvious to us. And for this adoption, for the first adoption, we just said 1 girl, 3 and under.
Okay.
And there were some additions that we made for some health concerns and things we opened up our search to be able to adopt more quickly. And for the second adoption, we said, well, why are we limiting ourselves to just 1? Because when we adjusted the home study, we had to pay a lot of extra money. So let's just start the home study with 2 kids with a more broadly written home study, allowing more concerns or issues with children to come into our house, and a larger age bracket of 14 and under.
Wow. Okay.
So, and that way, if there's an older sibling or who knows what's going on,
right? If something were to come up, some circumstance, you could.
And that's a wink from God. You know, I know what's going on, and you're going to need that home study.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't have had time in that 5 weeks to finish the home study and then start all the paperwork to get it through the lockbox in Louisville, Texas, to get all the stuff back, to meet us in China for our return trip with a visa into the United States. And it was amazing. You had to be approved for 2 children. With all kinds of varying special needs and non-special needs, and 14 and under, which maybe 0.5% of home studies written have that format, and there we were, but I knew it wasn't us. I was absolutely certain that couldn't possibly be us, and so fast forward. 3 years later, we're going to adopt another little boy to play with this little boy we adopted. So that's where Brogan came from. Okay. Who's now 8. He's going to be 9 in about a week and a half. Oh, and as we're going, the older boy the young man that we adopted, the 14-year-old almost, we got him the day before his birthday, by the way.
That's exciting.
He knew we were going back to get another baby, and he said, we really need to adopt my roommate from China. He's the only older child there who has all his mental faculties, and he really is a good guy, and I know money was a problem. And so if you needed it, you can have all of mine. So he got his $72 out of his piggy bank and was like, let's go get him. And so we did. So now they're not roommates, they're brothers.
Wow.
So God is good.
That's special. That's really cool.
We're enjoying it. God is a big God. Wow. He's winking at us probably 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So the last baby we got, she's 4 and she was born without part of her leg. Okay. And there's one guy, everybody says, oh, amputated the knee and get her a prosthetic, and that's all well and good. There's a lot of families that go that route. my wife wasn't ready to go that route, and so on the way to Shriners to have that consult, I guess, she found out about Dr. Paley over in West Palm Beach at the Paley Spine and Orthopedic Institute. And he actually does leg repairs where they take the fibula, which is the small bone, and move it over to where the tibia should have been but was missing.
Okay.
And she was born with tibial hemimelia, so she just doesn't have that larger bone in the bottom half of your leg.
Okay.
There's one guy in the whole world that does it. He's in our medical plan, and he's 2 hours that way.
Yeah.
So how great is that? People fly in from Dubai, people fly in from Poland, people fly in from, there's a family right here in town that moved from, I think, Virginia, and live here now because of him. Wow. And we just hop in the car and drive 2 hours and got a whole new leg.
That's incredible.
And she's a rock star.
So just for everyone listening and watching, what are all your kids' names?
We have just in age order. Yeah. We have.
And the first four are yours, biologically.
Biological,
yes, they're all yours.
So we have Rylan and Curran, and then Keen, who's adopted. Okay. And then Hayden and Eamon, and then Kai. Okay. And so they're all kind of the older crowd.
6 boys to start it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have the what we used to call the littles, but now we have the middles and the littles. Okay. So they're all boys, and then we have Grace and Hope, and then Liam and Brogan, and then baby Maeve. Okay. Queen Maeve, and we give them all Irish names. Okay. And Liam is about as Chinese looking as. Can I say that? I mean, if you look at him, you go like, "Is he Chinese?" You know.
You adopted him from China. I think I think that's fair.
But we told him he was Irish because I'm Irish and now he's mine, right? Oh. And the name on the back of his jersey says McQuade, right? So he's Liam Patrick McQuade.
I love that.
Of the Clan McQuade. That's his little.
I love
Liam
that.
McQuade of the Clan McQuade, and it wasn't until he was probably 7, my mother was doing the ancestral, where you draw the family tree, and he was born in China, so it had the name of the city. Yeah. He's like, Nanny, what does that say? She says, oh, that says China. Why does it say that? Well, because that's where you were born. Nope, I was born in Ireland. I'm Irish. Yes. And you look at that and you just go, what a beautiful thing. Yeah. You know, just, that's perfect.
I love that. Just, I think in a very real sense that shows how much of a strong and beautiful family unit that you and your wife have created and have built and loved on, but 2, how much of an impact that it can have on these children, and not just these specific children, but children in a family like anywhere. Yeah, and you know, a lot of people kind of get to that point of the conversation, especially the guys I'm flying with, and for some people it's kind of awkward. They don't know. Should I call them your children, or you know, they don't really know the vernacular to is that okay to say? And some people are really touchy. I know you're touchy-feely about it.
You're not going to offend me, whoever you are, you know. And where was I going with that?
About the family unit.
Oh yeah. So those same people. I'm sorry. Those same people. I've been up for a while.
That's fair.
Those same people will get to the end and kind of turn back forward. We'll answer a radio call or something like that, and then they go, "Gosh, those kids are so lucky." And I've not considered that yet. You know, we touched on this a little bit in our conversation as well, you and I. But we're the lucky ones. Yeah. You know, I don't use the word lucky except that he's already brought it up. Right. So. You know, and these kids are such a blessing, and I make sure to make that really clear that we haven't considered ourselves benefiting these children, because it's such a blessing to my own family, my unit, to bring children that we weren't able to have ourselves
Yeah.
into it, because we, like you, I want to have a large family, and I want to have a lovely family, and to be honest, I truly believe that having more children makes the children that we had before we got whoever just got here better as human beings, as Catholics, as practicing faithful Catholics, as brothers, as sisters eventually, you know, the sisters that we've adopted after adopting the girls. But all the older boys are outstanding young men. Yeah. They're lovely to be around. They're our friends now. Yeah. You know, and I'm still dad. Yeah. I still get the phone call every now and then if they need something or are struggling with something. But they're really our friends, and we'll take them out on date night with their wives. You know,
that's so sweet.
And it's a beautiful thing. 2 of them are married.
How old are your oldest?
The oldest is 29.
Okay.
And then there's a 27-year-old, and then the 23 and 22-year-old are married.
Okay. Oh, wow.
The 23-year-old's out in California. Okay. He married a girl from Ave Maria. Okay. From California, and they both graduated the same year, so they went to live where she's from, near her parents. My younger married son, Eamon, married Gabrielle, and Gabrielle graduated with Hayden and Julia. They got married. Yeah. So Eamon wasn't graduated yet. So she couldn't go back to Idaho where her parents are from. So she said, "Oh, Eamon's still here. I'm going to find a job locally." So she's teaching at Mason Academy here in Naples. Yeah. But that kept her local. That's nice. And that's the best, the best thing ever. Because then Eamon graduates and goes, "Oh, look, you already have a job. I have a job." He worked through college. Yeah, right here. Voila, they're local and nice and easy and married. Yeah. So which one we prefer. And I think the California couple's going to be back, because they're in California and it's not Florida.
Florida's a good place to be.
It is.
It's very nice.
It is. I'm sure they're going to have children, and it's just a great place to raise kids with the ideals and the value. And you can raise kids, fantastic kids. We've met a lot of fantastic people from California that have wonderful families. Right. But where the government's involved, it's just... I think, and I've never lived in California, but I think just with all the big picture, Florida's a good place to be. Let me leave it at that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's graceful. Yeah. That's a graceful way. Yeah. And speaking of blessings, you made a quick little comment where you're like, "Yeah, I've been up for a while." I just want to express to everyone that's watching and listening that you flew from Sao Paulo overnight last night. You got home early this morning. You're just getting stuff done here, and now you're here with me. So what a gift and a pleasure and a blessing this has been to actually share this time with you and be able to have this conversation.
Well, I'm happy to do it. Guadalupe Coffee is... I need to get a T-shirt that says "Fueled by the Guadalupe Roastery."
We'll get you fueled by Guad Squad or Guad or something. We'll get it.
I'm part of the Guad Squad.
We'll get it. We'll get it for you for sure. Well, Mike, that's pretty much it for our time, man. But thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it as well.
This is a beautiful way to start off our show, kick it off the common good. And we'll have to have you come a couple months, maybe a year or two. We'll circle back around and have you on again.
That sounds great. There's a lot of great things in Uganda I could talk for years about. And I know you're well versed in what's going on over there. I know Guadalupe Roastery is a big deal in supporting them with matching funds and that sort of thing. And we need a longer podcast for that, because I could talk for hours and hours.
I want to. That's such a special thing happening right now. Yeah. Give us a 5-minute or like 3 to 5 minute little.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'd love
Please.
to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to. We the quick 5-minute version is a couple of those same 2 sons, Hayden and Eamon, and a handful of other college students from Ave went with Father Joseph, who is a student here in the doctorate program from Uganda. Yeah. He's getting his certification to go back, and he's going to write all of the curriculum for the Ugandan public schools as a Catholic priest. How good is that?
That's
right?
Amazing.
The government schools are going to get their curriculum written by
Catholic priests.
Current day Don Bosco, right? And so they went and had their mission trip and came back, and it was a huge blessing to my sons. The mission trips are always more helpful for the faith of the missionaries than the garnering of benefit for the people visited. I've long held. And my sons, they already had a burn there. You know, it wasn't a noticeable spiritual change, but they came back and said, hey, we need to get engaged. There's so much that needs to be done over there. So we had Father Joseph over, came to love him, and said, how can we help? And he said, well, there's 11 kids. I think at the time there were 8 children under the age of 10 living with his parents that were late 60s and 70s, and both of them have different types of cancer. And so we said, well, how can we help? He said, well, these kids need to go to school. Well, how do we make that happen? It's $250 per child to go to school. For how long? For a year. And they house them and feed them and clothe them and everything. And so we'll sponsor a kid right now. And his eyes got big. I was like, wow, that's quite a response. We'll sponsor 2. You know, and his jaw dropped open. And so we have a little side business, and so every time we'd hit a milestone, we would sponsor another child.
That's amazing.
And so it didn't grow that rapidly. You know, I'm not Coca-Cola, or you know, I'm
not yet.
You know, but so we were just, you know, adding children to go to the day school or the boarding school in Uganda, one at a time. Then we had a fundraiser, and it was beautiful. We said, Dan or whomever, come to our house with you or with your family of 12, and you have to spend $10 or less for dinner. And I'm going to tell you why when you get there. And so when people got there, we all had this huge potluck. It was fantastic. And each family only spent $10 on dinner. And you and I both know, if you go out with a young lady to dinner somewhere, or a friend, you know, whatever.
Unless it's a street vendor.
Right. You're in for $35 easy. As soon as if you sit down to order, it's going to be $35. And so the premise was, okay, you only spent $10. We had a lot of pea soup, we had a lot of Italian food, we had a lot of noodles, and it was fantastic. You know, when people come to visit you for dinner, they're not coming to eat, right? And so we had this huge spread, and then I talked to everybody about how that, instead of going out to dinner one time a month, just have whatever you had tonight. It's a fantastic dinner. It's $10. The $20 difference per month will sponsor a child and change his life in Uganda. He'll be educated. He's not going to get kicked out of wherever he is at the age of 14 and not have any skills. You know, so now it starts to grow. People say, oh, I could do this. You know, we could sponsor 4 kids. And then we started doubling up for multiple years on about 35 to 40 children, and then some people local got together and built a school. So there's a 5-room school. Are we over 5 minutes? There's a
we're good.
There's a 5-room schoolhouse now, and instead of the little 15 by 20 kind of a shanty as classroom number 1, and the palm tree outside is classroom number 2 that my sons saw. They now have a 5-room schoolhouse with teachers and everything. There's 520 kids going to school now. 218 of them are spending the night because they're bona fide orphans. There's also an orphanage there. 283 of them are HIV positive. Father Joseph, here's another God moment. Father Joseph just did all the paperwork, so now the government is giving them the appropriate HIV, I was going to call it antiserum, HIV drugs, so they'll have normal, healthy, productive lives. And there's an educational process. The boys are going to get tracked towards agriculture and carpentry. The girls are going to get tracked towards more of a home business type, sewing type stuff. So they'll have a skill and they can support themselves versus just perpetuating what's already happening there. And so we're having another thing at our house, September 19th or 20th. It's whatever the Sunday is. The 19th at 7 p.m. right here in Ave Maria. And we're gonna have one more raise support. They're just about where they can start supporting themselves. Once we dig a well, we need about $17,000 for a well. They can start selling the water for 2 cents a gallon to the local people. and support, I think, a third of the expenses. We planted 5 acres of coffee. We need to talk offline about that.
Yeah,
we've got 2 acres of corn and 1.5 acres of beans.
Yeah.
We're raising, I think, $700 or $900 to plant, and that'll be half of the food that the kids are going to eat for 6 or 12 months. I don't have all the numbers right in front of me. There's another guy, Rich Eads, that is the numbers guy that's keeping track of all this with Father Joseph. But a lot of beautiful things happening over there, and just the brilliance and the brightness of these kids' eyes. We get pictures of them all the time.
I've been lucky enough to receive secondhand a bunch of those little videos. I've got a couple of videos of them playing, but then some of them dancing together and whatnot. And oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my word. Well, we'll pause it there.
Okay.
Because now we have to have you back.
Yeah, right.
But thank you so much.
To be continued.
That was incredible. And thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing all that with us and sharing the little moments of goodness and grace in our everyday lives and whatnot.
Well, happy to be here. Happy to share. God is good, and I'll just keep talking until I'm ready to go home to Him.
Well, thank you so much.
God bless you, Dan.
You too.
Thanks for doing this.
Of course.